I want to introduce Ben and Tony. Ben and Tony are both my friends, as well as have also attended our meetup in the past, and they have a lot of experience with psychedelics. I was going to do a little bit of an intro for Ben and Tony, but they've actually planned their own intro. So I'm actually just going to totally give it to you guys and just totally hand it over. So if you guys want to go ahead and kind of take it from here.
No, I'll start. I'll introduce you then. So I'm going to introduce Ben. He's my beloved. We met in the fall of 2016 and so what about Ben? So Ben hailed from the Philippines, then to the United States, then back to the Philippines, then to Dubai. And when he was in the States, he got a degree in nursing. And so that's how he knows Christoph. He became an emergency room nurse in Dubai. And then he got recruited to Abbotsford. And then he moved down and he started working with the downtown East Side population in Vancouver. And yeah, we met in the fall of 2016. And ayahuasca and the psychedelics have been a part of our relationship. We got married in the summer of 2018. So we moved fairly fast, and we think the medicine had a good deal to do with that. And the other thing I want to say about Ben, I'll keep this short, but that you can see that we're not the same age, right? So we got this big age gap between us, and we really connected when we first met. And I was kind of not suspicious, I was concerned, what's going on here. And so I wanted this to be a really conscious relationship, whatever was going on. And ayahuasca, as Ben will tell you, it's been a big part of my life. And so we met in October 2016, late October. And in January, I said, Ben, you should come to ceremony. And he goes, what ceremony? And I told him a little bit about it. Now, Ben has never really been drunk before. He's never smoked marijuana before. He's never done any mind-altering experience before. He's a pretty straight-laced oldest brother of four brothers and very diligent, that kind of guy. But he trusts me enough, and he comes over to Vancouver Island, and we go and drink for 4 consecutive nights. And for 3 of those nights, and this will lead into our story a little bit, for 3 of those nights, all he sees are butterflies and unicorns.
Hummingbirds.
Hummingbirds, butterflies, and unicorns. Anyway, he's having the greatest time. And the person I work with, and I take him aside, and we're sort of curious about this. Now, the other part of the way I wanted to introduce Ben is he has a tremendous amount of trauma in his life. So trauma relating from a whole bunch of things. And I knew this, and yet I'm seeing this guy have this amazing experience. So that after the 3rd ceremony, we sit him down and we say, Ben, this is great. You've made friends with the mother, you're really experiencing the medicine. But tonight, you might want to look at some stuff in your family, about your life. And then he went to the wall and he got terrified. And it was one of those really, really difficult ceremonies. And so the other thing I want to say about my husband is that stayed with him for a long period of time. He takes months between ceremonies, sometimes 4 months, 6 months. And when we go to drink again, he's always there. The way he drinks, he's upright, he's present, and he goes through tremendous emotional. He's courageous, he's a lion. And he really, really sits with the deepest and most painful parts of himself. And so this is the guy I'm married to, and this is one of your speakers today. Take it away, Ben.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. So hi, this is Tony, my most amazing husband. I say that a lot. Christoph knows that at work, I think I talk about him more than anything else, and people at work think they know him. And they call him my Tony, because that's how I refer to him at work. So Tony is all Canadian, He's done a lot of traveling in his past. He was a photographer and is still a photographer, an adventure photographer, a humanitarian photographer. Tony came to medicine in 2005, introduced to him by his 83-year-old mother. His mother wanted to honor her sister that had passed away, because her sister, Aunt Joyce, was an ayahuasca practitioner, not a shaman, but she drank ayahuasca in the 70s. And it was a big family secret. And when she passed, Tony's mother wanted to honor her by doing ayahuasca. And then she said, Tony, we're going to do ayahuasca. I think you should come. And lo and behold, hundreds of ceremonies later, he's here. Now, Tony's journey with ayahuasca has been long, and his shifts very subtle. I think, over the years, I've come to really appreciate that it has been slower for him to come to terms with his sexuality. And I'm so glad he found ayahuasca, or else he would have never had that shift. So Tony, other than holding space for me all the time when I get into my head, has also been working with Gabor Mate in Yalapa, worked with him for 10 years.
Yeah.
So Gabor Mate, if you don't know him, please find out. He's an amazing guy. Started holding ayahuasca ceremonies to facilitate it, the therapy portion of ayahuasca ceremonies in Yalapa a long while back. And Tony became a really good helper and a really good friend of his. And he got to witness so much of the healing aspects of psychedelics, especially ayahuasca. So when I met him, Tony really knew how to handle me in my unconsciousness. And I had never met anyone who held space, who was so sure-footed in life until I met Tony. And even though my life was chaos, there was something in him that I said, this guy knows what he's doing. And then I surrendered everything and just trusted him. And so when he said, let's go 4 nights of ayahuasca, I was like, okay. So at the beginning of my ayahuasca journey, I didn't know what I was doing. I was drinking, and Tony and some of his friends, it's mostly Tony, would use compassionate inquiry, which is a Gabor style of counseling, to lead me through, so I can have really instructive ceremonies. And so for 4 years, he's been really leading me through a lot, until recently, when I've been trying to do it on my own. So much gratitude for that. What else? There's nothing else to say.
That's pretty good.
Other than he's the most wonderful man.
Yeah, we and we don't mean to say this flippantly, but we welcome the shutdown. We welcome being stuck in this apartment together with each other. Mm-hmm. Anyway, we have a great relationship, and honest and wonderful.
And Tony said something to me a long time ago that has really resonated with me, and then I tell everyone. And it comes back to why we're here, and what we want to talk to you about is psychedelics and emotional growth and healing. Tony told me one time that, we're all born as light bulbs. And when we're born with that pure essence, and it's shining bright. But from the moment we're born, throughout our childhood, people, culture, our parents, especially our family, they start putting layers of paper in there. And they start to put so many layers of paper in there that at some point, sometimes we don't see the shine anymore. We don't see our essence anymore. But there's a part of us that loves us so much that invites us to unpeel those pieces of paper. And through psychedelics, especially, I mean, for us, ayahuasca, we start to peel away at those papers. And we finally see the shine again. And while we're peeling those papers, we finally see, the core beliefs that we take on as children and all the things that were put on us by other people, especially our family. And so that's what we're here to talk about, compassionate inquiry and psychedelics, and how you could guide plant medicine, psychedelics for healing and for emotional growth. I think Tony is much more skilled at talking about compassionate inquiry than I am. I'm just, in the infancy of my training.
He's really good. Okay,
thanks. So yeah, we're open into that.
Ben's training in it now. So it's a therapeutic technique. It's inspired by Gabor Mate, developed by Gabor Mate. And it kind of fits in with, who's your person? Anna Maria Badilla. Yeah, so I just pulled up the link that Christoph sent, and psychedelics and shadow work. And that is essentially what we're also talking about today. And she, in her third paragraph, she says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Mm-hmm. And that is kind of the essence of this compassionate inquiry work. So a little bit about Gabor Mate. He's a physician here in Vancouver. And, he's kind of been one of those guys. He has to be noticed. That's kind of his thing. So he's done a lot of stuff. He worked at St. Paul's and VGH and ran obstetrics and end-of-life stuff. And then he started looking at the downtown East Side population. He started working with the Portland Hotel Society. And while he was down there, he saw that a lot of people that couldn't afford it needed counseling. So he said, okay, this is what I'm gonna do for a couple of years. I'm just gonna counsel people. And he did. And he worked with mostly women, mostly Aboriginal women, mostly people who often were homeless and addicted drugs and alcohol. And he did this for 2 years, and it was, and he was developing his method, and people are really getting what's going on with him in some ways. They understand, okay, I didn't have the parents that I needed, but they never started making a shift. So they understand the mechanisms that were bringing themselves to seek support and comfort through drugs and alcohol, but they never really got it. And that's when he came to us. By this time, I was working with a guy by the name of Francois. I don't know if any of you remember him. He's I think he was the first person in Canada, came up from Peru and right at the start of the new millennium and started pouring ayahuasca with the datura. The ceremonies were incredible. And we were working on Bowen Island, the place called the Xenia Center. And one day I remember Gabor coming and I got him settled. And so that was his first ayahuasca experience. Now, the reason why he came to explore ayahuasca was his frustration with the lack of success that he was having only with the counseling. And after he had drunk a number of times, he realized the relationship between the type of counseling that he's developed, this compassionate inquiry, along with the medicine work. So what is compassionate inquiry? It's an approach, a therapeutic approach, where we try and realize our own unconsciousness. And basically, what he believes is that when we're young, and we're with whatever families we have, with whatever parents we have, and we experience pain, And our parents are not there to hold us, you know, as a regulated, strong, loving parent for whatever reason, that the child feels alone in that pain, and the child has to come up with an explanation for it. This is what humans do. This is what all humans will do. And so they make up a belief, often about themselves, sometimes about the world. And that belief is actually really helpful, even if it says, I'm experiencing all this pain because I'm not enough, because I'm too much, because I'm bad, because I'm stupid, because I'm useless. All those explanations, no matter how negative they are, they really allow us to navigate that lack of loving support. So when the same kind of pain comes on to us, we have an explanation now. Okay, the reason why my parent is the way they are, the reason why they can't hold me and love me in this, it's just that I'm bad. It's just that I'm not enough. It's just if I wasn't too much, then they could hold me. And so this becomes a belief that we have. And it's helpful. It gives us an explanation for kind of the chaos and madness of the pain that we're in when we're children. So great. And he calls it your friend. That belief, no matter how negative, is your friend. And then you grow up and you move out of home, and your parents aren't around you anymore, causing that kind of lack of holding or anything like that. But the belief doesn't go away. It stays with it, and it stays with us in spades. And our angst, our present day angst, whenever we're triggered, it's never about the situation. It's never about the situation. So you can be triggered in your everyday life. Some guy cuts you off and the rage comes up. Somebody ignores you, you know, maybe in the lineup for coffee, and you feel hurt. And however that trigger comes up, it's never about what's going on in the moment. It's always going back to that belief that you created when you were a kid. So, yeah, go ahead.
So what ayahuasca does, plant medicine and psychedelics do, you know, Tony and I'm always going to refer to ayahuasca because she is my medicine. There are all types of medicines. And Joe Tafur said that, you know, the best medicine is the medicine that heals, whatever it is that works for you. Ayahuasca allows us to see the possibilities beyond our core beliefs. My core belief, because when I was a kid, I had this belief that if I don't work, if I don't do anything, I'm worthless. So I can be addicted to work. And if I'm not providing or doing anything for my family, for anyone, I feel completely useless and worthless. And so whenever I take time off, I'm just like, what's going on? Or if I'm not contributing anything to our coffers, I always have to make sure if Tony's okay, does he still love me? So plant medicine allows me to see the possibility beyond that core belief. And it's not hoping, it's the possibility that I am someone else other than my core belief.
So how does it work? How does ayahuasca help you see that?
Ayahuasca makes you a witness to your life. You step out of your ego. It parks your ego. If you let it, there's a great deal of surrender that needs to happen. And it puts you outside of the house that is you. And you start looking inside, and you start to see every which way that you come. It allows you to experience all those difficult emotions that you had to protect yourself from a safe place. And at nights, sometimes in ceremony, it can be extremely painful. you know, spending a night with sadness, spending a night with shame. It's painful, but ultimately you're safe. There are people there to support you. It depends on the community that you work with. And by immersing yourself in that, like diving into that pool of sadness, diving into your gut and all that shame that's there, it's not that you get desensitized to the feeling. You start to form a relationship with it, a relationship with sadness, a relationship with anger, a relationship with shame. And these become your friends. They're no longer an enemy that you have to run away from. So much of what we do in our lives, and not just drugs and not just alcohol, but shopping, porn, sex addiction, shopping addiction, is to run away from the emotions that we can't handle. And when we spend that night with it, and it's not going to happen in one night. The shifts are very subtle. And you have to have an intention, a clear intention of why you wanted to go into this night. When I drink medicine, right before I drink ayahuasca, I shake and I'm scared and I don't want to do it. But I tell myself, I'm willing to die tonight to get to know who I am. And I always come back the next day. I always have an important lesson, even though it was like a fucking hard night. And so that's the gist of plant medicine, psychedelics, and ayahuasca, and emotional health and compassionate inquiry. I think they go hand in hand because compassionate inquiry through Gabor just cuts through.
So let me talk a little bit about how it happens. So he comes to Bowen and he kind of sees the light. He sees the way we can park our ego, just put it on the shelf for a while and really see our unconscious side, why we do the crazy things we do. And so he made a proposal with the practitioner I worked with, a guy by the name of Dave, to start working with him. And that led to a glorious run of about 10 years. We would do these 9-day retreats. And we did, I think, 15 or 17 of them over the period of 10 years. Now, I'd been helping in ceremonies before, and I continued to help. We'd only do these a couple of times a year with Gabor. But I'm helping in others, lots of others. And I'm noticing the shift in people's experiences when we have a Gabor retreat, what we call the Gabor retreat, versus just doing it on our own. And the Gabor retreats were explosive. And the practitioners talked about this as well. We had much bigger reactions, much bigger shifts in people when we were doing the Gabor retreat. The way they had worked, 9 days, sit around in a big circle, 25 people. Gabor works with 25 people from sun up till sundown. 3 times during the 9 days, we go in and we drink ayahuasca. What he's doing, and that it's time so that everybody gets a turn to really bring, this is what's going on in my life. That's really difficult. We worked with a lot of people who had severe addictions, severe depression, suicidal. The cases were big. And Gabor would work his technique, kind of what we described as compassionate inquiry, to allow people to see to understand the triggers of where it came from, how alone they were when they were kids, dealing with all this pain, dealing with this absence of holding. And their intention then would be to explore that in a way that was right for them, either into the sadness, looking at the rage and the anger, feeling the deep shame, and asking ayahuasca to guide them through that, just to see the roots of it. And it was very effective. It changed our community. The community I drink with is on Vancouver Island. The legacy, Gabor hasn't been doing it with us since about 2017. I think was our last one with him. But we're training in the method, and that's how we work with people. And the way it works is beforehand, just to spend time with people. What are you here for? What are you interested in? Why are you coming to ayahuasca? What's your interest? And if it's for healing, then we start having that conversation. No, what's not working out in your life? Where is the angst? And then asking them to do this same piece, coming right back to the Carl Jung quote, to start exploring the unconsciousness, which are the beliefs that we created when we were in pain and there was no holding. That's the unconsciousness. And that's what ayahuasca, and it's a funny thing, not just ayahuasca. There's a study published in JACA, the psychiatric journal, 5 days ago, that documented the great benefits of psilocybin on depression. It was, so all psychedelics have this feature, but it's the way that we work with them. And I don't know that there's that much more. I think now I think we could ramble on here. I think it could get pretty static. So maybe we'll open it up to some questions.
Or Christoph, want to ask questions or something?
Yeah. No, I want to thank you guys sort of for going through this. And actually, we're just getting started because beforehand, just before we even started, we were talking how we'd have a little bit of an open conversation with this and really have a chance for people to ask their questions and go a little bit deeper. And I wanted to sort of ask a question too, kind of going off what you guys were saying and relating this also to compassionate inquiry. And my question was, and this is just to get started, and we'll open up to everyone else so they can ask their questions. But when it comes to compassionate inquiry, like how does it, so can you walk me through a little bit through the format? So for example, like if you're using it with like, say, an ayahuasca journey and you're using compassionate inquiry as sort of the primary way of sort of, like, is it more tailored towards like the pre-work or the post-work, like the integration? Like, does any of it take place during the ceremony? Or do you sort of introduce the concepts to people first so their mind can start thinking about it, and then when they're in journey, it helps open certain doors? Or is it more integration work? Or do you want to maybe talk a little bit about that and just for any insight on that?
Yeah, Christoph, it's integration. I mean, integration is a big word. We hear about it all the time. It's sort of been the rage in medicine communities for the past 5 years or so. But what does it really mean? And so this is where it's particularly valuable. And it's to, you can go in and you can have an epiphanal experience with ayahuasca or other psychedelics, and it can change your life. But it's kind of a crapshoot. How about if I told you that you could increase your possibility for deep personal change by multiple factors, by doing some really, really solid integration work ahead of time? And that's what we're talking is therapy. So it's a therapeutic technique. And it can be done depending on the person. Sometimes people get it pretty quickly. Other times it takes a number of sessions. And it's not so much about anybody who's practicing the technique telling you anything. It's about having you having the emotional shift of really getting what unconscious beliefs you created for yourself. Now, with some awareness of that, the way that you get triggered and what's behind the trigger, that becomes the intention for your journey. Okay, I want to really go in and look at this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question too sorry, I'm just gonna ask one more thing before we just open it up. How do you find that, so when you use compassionate inquiry to sort of help maybe resolve some of these traumas or at least make things better in whatever sort of context you're looking at it, do you find that is it usually lasting change? Like, are there things that you can have that are like permanently lasting, or is it just the human capacity to always regress to things? So like, because I know there's a lot of people who will go in and they won't just journey one time. It will be like, once a year or once a decade, or they will dive back in. I'm just wondering, what in your experience do you find, like, are there lasting changes from that? Or is it, I guess it varies maybe from person to person, but just wondering what you've seen and what your perspective on that is.
I'm going to use myself as an example. I remember every single ceremony over the past 4 years. And I can remember my first big ceremony when my grandmother came in to comfort me. And I think it's really up to a person. It's up to a person how much you want to integrate, how much you want to keep that lesson in your life, you know, to take it on forward. There's so many ceremonies, I'm trying to think of one. I'm going to talk about the last ceremony that we had. My husband and I had a ceremony up in the mountains this summer. So we went up into the backcountry, we went up the mountain and drank ayahuasca with him and 4 other men. It was important because I was drinking ayahuasca with 4 straight guys, very straight guys. And to me, straight men have always been threatening. They've been the source of my trauma. They're scary. So how do I surrender in ceremony with them? And, you know, interestingly enough, it was okay. I was able to surrender. And our first night of ceremonies, I was paralyzed for 4 or 5 hours. I couldn't move. I was just feeling her throughout my entire body, just working my entire body. It was the first ceremony I've had without visions, and it was all somatic. It was scary, but I trusted it. And then after the ceremony, I was just exhausted. And I felt my body. And at that moment, what was my body telling me? You're tired. And my husband and I, other than doing plant medicine work and, you know, his photography, and other than being an emergency nurse, we love the outdoors. We spend so much time in the outdoors. And this summer, I kind of went a little crazy. 10 days here, 7 days there, 6 days here. And we just kept going and going and going. And that night when ayahuasca paralyzed me, forced me to go in my body actually and feel my body. I had to reassess my relationship with the outdoors. Why am I doing this? Am I doing this to feel special? Am I doing this to escape something? Because I'm tired. And if I listened to my body, I'd be tired. And this was in July. And I've been thinking about it ever since. And I keep the lesson with me as much as I can every day. I'm not successful every time. But now I try to listen to my body. And my goal has been, I want to be an ally of my body. I want to be friends with my body. I don't want to listen to it until it's too late and I'm sick. So this is some way that you can keep the lesson and keep it going months after ceremonies or years after ceremonies. So there's many ways to do it. And often you have to make that conscious decision, whether you want to integrate and run with it, or if it's too painful, then just not touch it.
Perfect. Thanks, you guys. I want to open it up. I guess, Kenny, if you want to sort of just take over for the role. I don't know if you can hear me. Oh, I don't know if he's accessible this time. Okay. I've just got we've got a couple questions.
Yeah, hey,
Kenny,
I'm here. I am,
okay, perfect.
Yep, just
Great.
trying to
I just saw a couple questions in the
get
chat.
Andres. Oh, I see some people are raising hands. So let's see. Andres, you out there?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
All right, you're up first.
So a little bit more of a hardball question than the one my brother was throwing at you guys. Hopefully you guys are up for it. So I guess this is a question, kind of a broader question outside the context of even compassionate inquiry, but just with all the psychedelic medicine and these plant medicines, I find the discourse is often very centered around, you know, the healing journeys and kind of being on these journeys of spiritual healing, but in perpetuity. And so I guess I wonder if you can speak to, when does that end? And then does that become detrimental at some point? Because again, we can always keep improving. We can always keep unpacking our historic conditioning. And so it just becomes a question of, how much emphasis are we placing there versus how much emphasis are we placing on our present moment and changing our relation to whatever is arising, instead of trying to unpack the past and heal whatever trauma we might have dealt with in the past. So if you want to speak to any part of that.
Yeah. So your question is, can I live in the present moment? Through this work, can I be present? And the other part of the question is, if I heard you right, is there an endpoint here? Am I doing these psychedelics to get to a certain point of peace and grace, and then I'm kind of done with them? So they're here they've done their job. I'm kind of healed. I mean, I took the medicine, now I'm complete. Have I got you right?
Yeah, that's more or less right. And I'd add that there's a little nuance in terms of what I feel kind of plant medicine culture gets at, which is that there's kind of a seeming addiction, or it becomes part of one's identity to be on this path of healing forever. And that may be, that may be just how it works. But yeah, I'm wondering if you can speak to that, or how you conceptualize that.
A lot of people avoid their unconsciousness by being on this healing path forever. And they can do that through plant medicine. They can do that through Christianity. They can do that through Sundance and sweats and things like that. And they go wholeheartedly into that realm. And what they're able to do by taking such a coherent focus on that is avoid their own pain, not deal with their own pain, bypass their own pain. Have you heard Andreas said it?
Yeah, that's right.
Have you heard of the term spiritual bypass?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's what's going on. Mm-hmm. So psychedelics, I mean, for me, it's not an endpoint. Like, I hope that I'll be drinking ayahuasca when I'm in my 90s, as a lot of the South American shamans do. That's my intention anyway, because I think besides healing my own personal trauma, there's a whole world out there in terms of the spiritual side of ayahuasca and the connection to other parts of myself. I never stop learning. I've got 500-600 ceremonies in, and the appreciation for who I am, the learning that goes on, is never ending. Just like if I studied Buddhism, or if I studied anything else, I plan to be curious throughout my life. So yes, it'll be a part. Now, just like therapy, just like compassionate inquiry, so I've got these triggers, and it's coming from this early childhood pain. Am I ever going to be rid of them? Maybe not, but I'll have a different relationship with them. And I think that's what will happen both with the compassionate inquiry and through the plant medicine, that I come to have a different relationship with the deep hurt, the angst that's inside me. Perhaps someday I'll reach some kind of nirvana where they're not even in my life anymore. But more likely, I'll just recognize them for what they are. So I go out and somebody cuts me off, and instead of instantly flipping into that rage, I can feel the cortisol rising in my body. I can feel the trigger. I can feel and then instead of giving into that and thinking about, having this rage against this individual, I can say, wow, there it comes again. The way that this belief of being hard done by someone. And I can explore that. I can just explore, okay, and where did that come from? Oh, there it is again, that old childhood friend that protected me from the pain and isolation. So I can really get that. And sometimes I won't. When triggers are strong enough, they'll take over me for that moment. The ayahuasca or the psychedelics, my belief is under the effects of these medicines, we see life more clearly than we are living it right now. We are able to, as all the literature you've all read about, we're able to take our ego offline. We're now truly seeing ourselves as we are. We're seeing the foolishness of how we behave, how we react. We're seeing the apparent contradictions in the way our unconscious behavior affects who we really want to be. And I think that'll be for me ongoing.
I just want to add to that. There's one word that you said, Andras, addiction. There is such a thing as Anthrogenic Addiction. Like we get addicted to being in the higher state of mind. And I think Tony touched on that by saying it's a spiritual bypass. It feels good to be up there when you feel like you've figured it out, but life is not up there, life is here. I don't know how to impress upon people that there are some, like, Tony and I also work with 5-MeO, and it is a 5-MeO DMT, especially when smoked, brings you up there to that state of almost self-actualization. But what I realized after doing 5-MeO was that it just took me to where I want to be. But life is here. And life, I don't want to make it sound bad, but there's a beauty in the work. There's a fulfillment in the work that's here that will take us up there. And that's where so much beauty happens down here to get up there. So it is real. I agree with you that some people can get addicted to that higher state. We can get addicted to anything, really. And it is, I often think it is a spiritual bypass, as Tony talked about.
Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on that. I appreciate that.
Thank you for this question.
Yeah, thanks.
Being unmuted, so I'm guessing I'm gonna ask a quick question.
Yeah. Next up is Brad.
Hey, hi everyone.
Peter, you're
Tony. Haven't seen Tony for September. It was 2019. It was September 22nd, 21st. So it's really good to see you. And my question is around. Just get your face. There we go. My question is around integration. And I'm curious around the three kind of versions of self. We have this past, the present, and then the future. And I find sometimes we can get so glamorized into our ideal self in the future that we kind of lose presence in the now. And I think it goes on the lines of spiritual bypassing. But there is that space, it seems, right between the present and the future, which is stepping right into the emerging future. I know Otto Scharmer talks about this a lot with his theory of presencing, and he brings it to large organizations, and it's about being open-hearted and centered. So I was just curious about your experience with that and how you've managed that space between the present and the new future, which isn't the past anymore, but you're stepping into now what your intention, your integration, that kind of thing.
Brad, I just want to see if I got the question right. So, there's a certain, you're saying, so you've done medicine, there's excitement of what the future holds, the possibility. So how do you stay in the present and not get carried away about the possibility of what's to come?
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
Yeah, stay in your body. Feel your body. And, you know, ayahuasca and psychedelics, they invite you to stay in your body. And when you're in your body, you're in the present because your body only knows is in the present. It holds all the answers. And often when you're in the present and you're in your body, you'll feel gratitude because there's just gratitude of being alive. And what's more exciting than that? I mean,
that's beautiful, Ben. Yeah. Is there a follow-up question?
Yeah, I love it. Stay in our body. I mean, I did a 11-week book club with The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, and that was phenomenal. And I fully believe now, you know, words really do impact us, and we embody our language in a way too. But we also can get wrapped up in the story. I guess like on a practical sense of, we got 168 hours in a week, staying in our body. I guess it is just really surrendering to the fact that our body really does know, our guts and our heart and our mind, you know, accessing these 3 centers. We have the 7 chakra centers and Ayurvedic medicine, that kind of thing too. So yeah, I guess thanks. And I appreciate that outlook.
Yeah. Thanks for that question. It is a very, you know, after your first ceremony, you're like, oh, hummingbirds. Or like, oh man, that was an intense night. Tony and I Joe Tafur is holding a class, an online course right now. They have a Navajo medicine woman, teacher, that in their culture, anxiety is defined as not being in the present. When you are out of your body and not in the present, that is a window to anxiety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Next up, Peter.
Hi guys. So super awesome talk so far. I've loved listening in, and I had a question related to, like, let's say we're having this sort of ongoing relationship with these plant medicines, whether it's ayahuasca or psilocybin. And is there sort of like a protocol to follow, like when, you know, you're dosing multiple times a year? Is it when you feel called back, or is there some sort of like as a monthly thing? Like, is it whenever you finish your integration? Like, how do you know when you've completed it? Like, when do you feel like you're ready to dive back in?
Yeah, and there's a couple of good questions here. So I started in the fall of 2005 with ayahuasca, and I drank it about 500 some odd times before I tried anything else. So I was pretty much on that path. And in some ways, I have no regrets. I think it gave me everything I needed. And now we're branching out quite a bit. And so I've been to Africa with Iboga, and here, and trying different medicines here. We don't, so this other part of your question, Ben and I, we don't do them a lot. Like, we have a pretty good pharmacy, but we're very, very thoughtful about when we're going to make space for something. And ayahuasca is more complicated because we have to get the ceremony. We need a practitioner. It's not something we're going to drink on our own. And so but these other medicines, you know, whether it's MDMA or psilocybin or 5-MeO or whatever it is, it's like, what's driving us to do that? What do we want to do? And I think to approach it with the sacred in mind is a really good way to go, Peter. It's to really be conscious about, what am I looking for with this experience? And it might be healing. It might also be spiritual fulfillment. You know, I don't know if you use that quote from Joe Tafur, but I think you did that. Well, no, you did that. Again, it's from Joe Tafur that no, the plants they're just plants. They're just plants. There's no sort of goodness or badness associated inherently with them. drinking a lot of ayahuasca or doing a lot of psilocybin isn't going to make you a better person. It doesn't come with the territory. I do remember, in I think around 2012, there was a group out of Seattle of of high-tech guys, and they got together and they drank ayahuasca to plan corporate takeovers, you know, because it's very creative, you know, thinking outside the box. That can certainly be. If you go to the Amazon, you know, the brujos, people that use ayahuasca to look at the very dark, the shadow side, the dark side, and to work with that dark side, to work. So it can be done that way. So it's intentional. We try and take space. It's pretty sacred when we create a day for it or a few days for it. We plan it in advance. I think the way that you approach it's really important. I love the ayahuasca diet. It's like being a monk and sort of very limiting your foods and what you're watching and what you're doing, being more monk-like, taking you down to that calm, open state and approaching it with reverence. That's really important as well. Follow up, Peter? Did that answer the question?
I think it answered most of it. Like, I guess the only other thing I would say, or I would ask, is kind of like, what would be, like, is there a certain frequency where you probably maybe kind of take a step back and you realize like you're maybe you're getting to that high without necessarily doing the work? Like, is there some sort of cues you can take where you kind of notice that you're kind of falling into that pursuit, that striving for something, but you know, you could benefit from kind of being sober?
Yeah, that's a really good question. You know, when is too much, right? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Like, okay, this is too much.
When you're unconscious, when it's taking you into the unconscious, when you are using it to
escape,
avoid things,
yeah.
When it's having negative consequences in your life, you know, like you're getting high so much that you're missing work, or you're not spending time with your partner, you're not out in nature like you liked. I mean, those would all be big warning signs.
And I this is something I'm trying to still practice, and I also give advice to people, is that getting in touch with your intuition and your gut. Like, once again, go into your body, and what does your intuition and gut tell you? And often spend some time with that silence, and it'll tell you it's time to stop and integrate.
Ben's really good at that. He takes these big chunks of time between, and he reflects and learns from it. Now in the Amazon, you've got people at the shamans down there. They're drinking probably 250 nights a year. Like, they're doing it a lot. I've drunk ayahuasca, I don't know what my record is, at 12, 15 nights in a row. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. It didn't hurt me. As a matter of fact, it brought me to a stage of awareness that was beautiful. I didn't sense anything unhealthy there. There was no, you know, I mean, when it was over, and I didn't think much back to it, yearn for it or anything like that. But it's really being, am I present? Am I being really conscious about what I'm doing here?
And we just talked to a shaman actually that has recently cut down on ceremonies. And the shaman was talking about, you know what, we were drinking for 10 years because, you know, they do this to help people. And now that they've slowed down, they're saying, oh my God, yes, I remember that ceremony. And now they're just integrating now. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, you know, be compassionate with yourself, be patient with yourself, and you will know when to integrate.
And most importantly, Peter, if you went on a, you know, there's a lot of unconscious shamans. There's a lot of shamans that haven't done their stuff. There's a lot of shamans, you've read about them, that where there's sexual abuse in ceremonies. I mean, that also goes with the territory. There's no magic bullet to taking these psychedelics and automatically rising up into a state of conscious nirvana. That doesn't happen either. It's and it's kind of beautiful. It's about our intention. It's about what we bring to it. Do we want to work towards the light or the dark? Do we want to use it just to have this sort of spiritual thing going on, like being with the plants? If some of you know, those that have drunk a lot of ayahuasca, you can get into that beautiful space where you're actually with the plants. But if you haven't done your work, if there's still a lot of pain there that hasn't been touched or explored, I think you're shortchanging yourself. And that's our big focus in doing all these psychedelics, is for the personal healing and to work with people. I'm a therapist with a keen bent on using plant medicines to support that. Ben's learning it as well. I mean, that's kind of our gig now. And watching the changes take place in people is rewarding. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Welcome
Thanks,
to
Peter.
Thanks.
Excellent. So I don't see anything else. Last call for any questions. Jump out.
Vanna has her hand up, Kenny.
Oh, I missed that.
I'm there for you.
Thank you. Thank you. Vanna, you are good to go.
Thank you for that. So my question is around resistance, both prior to, because this is my most recent experience. I'm sure this group will understand when I say you sometimes you feel the call towards the plants. And in the past, when I felt the call, I heeded it and I went through with it and I did ceremonies. This time, however, I had a powerful experience with ayahuasca last year. And after that, when I got the call, I was extremely resistant. And I know why. The why is because I was really happy. And it was the first time in my life that I felt tremendous amounts of peace and I didn't want to dig in deeper. So that actually prevented me from doing anything, whether it's meditation, yoga, all the regular stuff. Specifically plant medicine, it terrified me. So my question is, and that resistance also shows up for me in plant medicine ceremonies. I find that if I'm afraid of what I'm going to see, I become extremely resistant. Now, this ceremony, I was very open and I was able to dive in deep. And with that, obviously came a lot of integration pieces that necessarily weren't heavenly, to say. So my question is, how do you deal with the resistance prior to it? Because I think I took way too long to answer this call, but it didn't only show up with regards to plant medicine. It was other things too, like I said earlier.
I have a short answer to that. Is I think you're in the right direction by exploring the resistance. Now, you said a couple of things there that really interested me. You said, like, I'm happy. I'm experiencing peace. What's wrong with that, Vanna? Like, don't we all want to experience peace? Don't we all want to experience happiness? But, and there's a certain resistance of guarding that peace and happiness. So
that's exactly it. Yeah. That resistance came from fear, not necessarily from love.
So fear. So, we could go into this so many ways, and I don't want to delve deeper if, with so many people watching, but like, how long has that fear been there?
Are you doing CI on me right now?
Kind of.
He is. Sometimes you have to do this. I take him out, and the thing you need is permission. And
well, I didn't ask you to answer that question, but just being curious, I think, and also compassion. Just acknowledging that there's nothing wrong with wanting to be happy and having peace.
Mm-hmm.
And also showing that part of yourself that's resistant and fearful, showing that some compassion. because things only start to shift when you show yourself some compassion and you show that part of you some compassion. Tony?
That's beautiful, Ben. The only piece I'll add to it is, in some ways, medicines are like therapy. Now, if you went to a therapist you didn't trust, you felt afraid of, you felt you would be judged, you felt you'd be exposed, how much good work do you think would happen in that session?
Not much.
Yeah, your shields are right up. And I think we never try and talk anyone into medicine. It's, if there's a really deep-seated fear there, it's come to terms with that, work on that fear, the resistance piece, and then come and do the plant medicine. Because you do need, and I'm sure you've talked about it in many other meetups, but that surrender it's a huge part. And that really gut felt, I'll go anywhere with this medicine. Take me anywhere. I surrender everything in order to heal, no matter where the pain is, no matter what the fear is. And it's that bringing that courageous warrior part of yourself to ceremony. And you do it in counseling too. Why people hate counseling. That's why drugs and alcohol and all our other addictions are so much more, if we're not
easier.
Yeah, easier if we're not ready to come to look at the pain.
Thank you for asking that question.
Yeah,
thank you for being vulnerable with that question too.
Yeah. No problem. Thank you so much for the answers. It was really insightful.
Thank you. You're welcome.
All right, well, I think that's all questions that we have. So Christoph, if you want to say anything before we take a break, or
No, I think that was it. Again, just do recommend you guys stick around for this. We are going to take a little break. Anyone who wants to not be part of this, just do make sure you sign out before we go back, because we're going to be splitting the groups based on the number of people that are here, and it just kind of can mess up the group sizes if people end up leaving before that. So I'll give it back to you, Ken, if you want to add anything else.
Nope, that's all. Thanks everyone for coming. And again, we're gonna have the group discussions in a few minutes. We'll just take a 3-minute break, 3-4 minute break to get a drink and to use the washroom, whatever you need. And yeah, if you are not gonna participate in the group discussions, please do, thank you for your time, and please do leave so we can get a nice even mix of participants.
Perfect.
So
Yeah.
See you in a few minutes, everybody.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. All right, thanks, Tony and Ben.
Hi, Anita.
Well, you got friends on?
Yeah, I met her at the barbecue.